thank you all so much for being here today at my breakout session. I did not expect the room to be so filled, so thank you. And thank you to Tom and Ryan and the Gemba Summit team for asking me to speak today, and especially about total ownership. It's an incredible topic that I know through lived experience can absolutely change a culture. When I was first introduced to total ownership, I was a little bit skeptic, but once I fully got embedded into it and seen the results, I knew that this is something that we need to do. And now, as I'm out with other companies working with them, I know that it's an incredible tool and they need to do this. If you think this is something that isn't working in your organization, then after this talk today, you'll understand why you'll be able to go back and make it work in your organization. So, ownership. I want you all to take just about 10 or 15 seconds to think about what do you think about when you think ownership. So what are the first one or two words that come into your mind when you think ownership? I'm going to ask a few people in the room what those are. And I'm going to look around for some people that I know. So Oliver Conker, what do you think about when you think ownership? Me. So Oliver thinks of himself when he thinks ownership. And let me have a look. I'm trying to recognize some people that I actually know their names. So Brian. It's yours. You own it. You care about it. Kevin, what do you think when you think ownership? Leave it better than you found it. Anybody else have anything when they think ownership that they want to call out? Responsibility. Accountability. Anything else? From start to finish. Sorry? Stewardship. Love that. A lot of the things that we think about when we think ownership they're quite big. A lot of people think, I own my role at work. So whatever that role is, I own that. I go to work every day and I do that. I have ownership of me, my body, who I am, how I present myself to the world. And I also have ownership of whatever my role is in my family. So you could be the breadwinner of the family, you could be the person that's at home making sure that the kids get to all of the school clubs, the after-school activities, the provider. But everything that all of you said and what you see on the screen here, they're all really, really big. They're huge things. And whenever we think of ownership, it's a massive thing. Whenever you own something, it's huge. So why does total ownership and lean align so well? Especially the lean that we know. The lean that, most of us are attracted to is the Ryan's version of lean, which is lean made simple, a real simplified version. And Paul Eker's fix what bugs you, creating 2-second improvements. Leave it better than you found it. So something that's incredibly huge, along with small daily incremental improvements. And maybe that's why a lot of people can't make total ownership work in their organizations. What I'm going to tell you now is how the concept of total ownership was created and introduced into the lean world as I know it. So back about, as Matt had said there, I previously worked at Seating Matters and left 8 weeks ago, so I may say we a little bit still. I might be saying that for a few years. So back about, we were about 2 years into our lean journey at Seating Matters, and Ryan had been reading the book Extreme Ownership. And he had come in one day, as he had many times, with lots of little concepts, or huge concepts, and said, as if anybody knows Ryan, will know that it was like this. This is going to change our business. What is it? Total ownership. That is going to change our business. And okay, is it really? Tell me a little bit more about that. And he went on to explain that ownership is, when you have ownership of anything at all, you really feel that. You feel like, yes, this is mine and no one is going to take it from me. You really look after it. So he read the book and thought, how can I get more people feeling like that in our organization? Back then, we were about 2 years into our lean journey, and lots of the factory, the physical facility, was coming up to a really good standard, if you can imagine 2 years into a lean journey. So if I was a sewer, for instance, my sewing machine was coming up to a good standard. There was good 3S, or 5S if some of you are 5S. There's good 3S improvements, there was good visual control, there was good standard work, and lots of process improvements. And the same for a welder, for instance. Their welding bay was really good. Or if I worked in the office, if I was processing orders, I still had tools. I had a screen, I had a keyboard, mouse, my little area, and I looked after that. But if you think back to your own organizations, and think about the physical space that you have. We also had that. We have our own little areas and then all of this other space. We recognized that there was about 80% of the physical environment that wasn't up to the same standard of those areas where people felt like they owned it. So if I'm a sewer, it just goes without saying that I own this particular area that I come to all day, every day. So that's why I'm looking after it to the best I can. So what we decided to do was ask everyone in the entire organization to take ownership of something that was outside of their own working environment, their initial immediate place where they go to work. And we fully explained that to everyone at a morning meeting, and then started at the very front door of the factory and decided to walk through the entire premises and identify all of the areas, equipment areas, machinery, that were less or substandard, that needed a little bit more looking after. And we asked someone nearby to that area, or someone that was trained with the equipment, to take full ownership of that and explain to them, we explained to them what that meant to take ownership of that. So the types of things that you'll see here, they're all quite small. So it would be maybe a front entrance to your building. If you think about the front entrance to your building, you might not think, like, why would someone need ownership of that? But it needs to be clean and tidy. There's usually a mat there. Some have defibrillators, first aid areas. Some have a welcome sign, some have an iPad. Lots of things that still need to be looked after. You'll see there's a forklift. How many of you have forklifts in the room? There's probably most of you. How many people have forklifts in the room? And I would say that's a lot of people. And I would say that there's a lot more forklift drivers in your premises than there are forklifts. So one forklift driver does not get one forklift, and they own it. So you'll notice that these are areas that are communally used, so are used by most people or a few people in the organization. Not one person uses any of these. So you'll see a Hoover there. Anybody can go and grab the Hoover. A meeting room. A meeting room it needs to be set up, it needs to be clean, it needs to be tidy, it needs to be ready to use whenever we want to use it. Inventory areas. We need to make sure that they're clean and tidy and good visual control and all the stocks in place. Printers. How many people have tried to print something and the printer didn't work and you just went to find the next printer? You scrolled to find the next printer. That's usually because it just didn't work. If you have to replace the paper or ink, that's okay. But anything deeper than that, that's somebody else's job. That's not my job. Because dual ownership is no ownership. So what I found after we had rolled out total ownership and assigned it to everyone, or requested every single person in the entire organization had ownership of something, what I found was within months, we started to see the responsibility of all of those things being shared. I'll actually just go back. All of these things were now being shared. So anybody in a leadership position, and I would imagine there's a lot of leaders in the room today, anybody in a leadership position will know that if there's a printer broken, or if there's the hallway's not tidy, it's usually you that has to either do it or find someone else to do it, or manage that being done or being looked after. And these are all small, menial things that still have to get done, but it was usually came back to the customer service manager, the production manager, and it was really, really painful. I was production manager at this time when we rolled out total ownership, and I'm just seeing the Hoover up here, and if you can imagine, I'm just thinking back to the pain that I used to feel with all of these things. As a production manager, your job is to get stuff out the door. I was in manufacturing, so it was get the stuff out the door, but then you also have to stop and fix. You have to stop the line. So I was being pulled to get the stuff out the door, and then also we have to stop and fix it. We were all almost working against each other a little bit. So I had the pressure of that. And then I also had somebody waving a Hoover lead in the background going, my Hoover's broke, or this Hoover is, I need a filter for this. And at that time we had 23 Hoovers in the entire facility. We had the Henry Hoovers, the Dyson Hoovers, the wet and dry Hoovers, just lots and lots of different Hoovers. And you'll think this is so menial, but every so often somebody would say, there's something wrong with the Hoover, we need this or we need that. As soon as we got someone assigned to look after those Hoovers, my shoulders dropped. I never got asked about a Hoover again. It just always worked after that. I never heard about a broken Hoover. So that's a little bit about shared responsibility. And if you think about the 3 M's of lean, if any of you have been practicing lean for a while, you will know this. We're always striving to reduce muda, mura, and muri. And that is, we're always striving to reduce waste from our processes. We're always striving to reduce the variation or the unevenness in our products, in our processes. We're trying to standardize as much as possible, so it's much easier to do. And Murray, we're always striving to reduce burden. So total ownership was a massive burden from me as a leader in the organization. It created a place for more improvements to happen. So if you think back to anybody that works in your organization or yourself, we become very complacent to seeing waste within our own environment. You just don't see it, especially in a lean company. If you knew there was a better way, which you know there is, but if you were able to see the better way, you would do it. You would be doing it. So eventually we get there, and every now and again our pennies drop. But whenever you have total ownership of something outside of your own working area, you now get to go over here outside of your own area with fresh eyes, where 10, 20, 30 people in the organization can make a mistake, and they can create problems. So it's now your job to take ownership and responsibility of something outside of your own area, and you now get to make improvements. If any of you are at the stage where you're ready to implement total ownership into your lean culture, you'll know that you'll be in a position to know that lean is now a requirement. It's not an option anymore. In the very early days of implementing lean into your culture, it's let's just see who's with us and see who's not with us. But there becomes a time when you have to make a decision as leaders to say lean is a requirement in this business. Everyone that works here needs to think with a continuous improvement mindset. And there's lots of different ways that we get people to think like that, as in there's always a better way. So when you now have to make improvements for the business, because success is now based on improving your role rather than just doing your role, you now have something else to improve. The next thing it does is it develops leaders. So I've seen this happen a few times throughout my time managing operations, that when you have some young, really enthusiastic people in the organization that aren't leaders yet, when they get the opportunity to step outside of their own role that they may be really good at, to now look after something else, they can really step up. So most of us that are leaders have made our way through the organization into a leadership position. You got there because you went above and beyond. You did a little bit more. And that's how you get to be in a leadership position. That's how you get recognized. This is now giving people an opportunity to do a little bit more. Yes, it might be managing the Hoovers, but it's the way you do that. If you're a true leader and you see that in someone else, you're going to bring them up and try them with responsibility with something else. And next, it allows for more value to be added. So in the lean world, this term value added is it's very, very familiar. So we're all very aware of value and non-value. I've taken this picture from a Lean Smarts video, and a few of you will recognize it. So we all know that everything that we do is a process. All day, every day, we're following through in lots and lots of different processes. And in the lean world, the rule of thumb is that about 90% of everything that we do is waste, give or take a little bit. And whenever you think about some of the things that I talked about earlier, that people have total ownership of, these are things that aren't really adding a lot of value to the customer. So when we're having meetings, is the customer willing to pay for those meetings? Not really. They don't want to think about us all sitting around a room having a meeting and not manufacturing their product or preparing their service or whatever industry you're in. They're not really willing to pay for us to clean the factory with the Hoovers. If they don't think about this, they're not willing for the forklift to be kept clean and tidy. But it has to work. We have to make sure that these things work. So when you look back at the process of value and non-value, the looking after of those cleaning the factory at the end of the day and making sure that the forklift is in good working order, making sure that when we get to break time or lunchtime, that there's enough microwaves, toasters in the canteen, and it's not the manager's job to make sure that there's not queues of people not getting back to their job because there's not enough microwaves. We realize that all of those things within that waste that you see, the red parts, a lot of that is necessary non-value added. As in, we still have to do it, whether the customer likes it or not. We still have to do it. We have to clean the environment. We have to clean up at the end of the day. We have to make sure that the forklift works. So when we go to any of these areas, which are deemed as waste, because we're not adding value to the customer at that time, we have to go there and be as efficient as possible. So how do you clean up as efficiently as possible? How do we make sure that the printers are working whenever we want to use them? How do we make sure that the clock in the meeting room and the remote control in the meeting room is working? These things need to happen, because if you think about flow and flow from the customer placing the order to them receiving the product, everything should work to create flow. It's absolutely essential that we're always striving for flow. I'm working with a company at the minute, and I'm not sure if he's in the room, but Paul Nolan down at Adman Steel Sheds, he has a saying, and he says this over and over and over again to his incredibly lean culture. He says, all we're looking for all day, every day, is those start-stop moments. And we need everybody in the entire organization to recognize those start-stop moments and put something in place to make sure that never happens again. So no matter how big or small the task is, everything should flow, everything should work. We're always striving for flow. So whenever you go back to your organizations, recognize those start-stop moments and think, and especially whenever they're around menial tasks, not where the value is added. It's around those menial tasks that are necessary non-value. A few of you might recognize this. This is the sand, pebbles, rocks, and if any of you are an EOS company or practice in EOS, you might recognize this. So I thought I would bring this in and talk a little bit about the sand and the pebbles and the rocks. We as, if any of you are senior leadership or managers or CEOs, even supervisors, so any type of leader in an organization, you're usually not adding value. We are the support team to the value adders. If you can imagine an inverted organizational chart, the CEOs just supporting the senior leadership team that are supporting the middle management, that are supporting supervisors. We're all just supporting the value adders at the top. So what is our role? Where is value in what we do? So our job is we are long-term thinkers. We are thinking about, yes, we're in the day-to-day, but we're also thinking about tomorrow and the next day, while the value adders are getting the value out the door, and ideally they're thinking about improvements as they're doing it. But we also have big things that we need to look after. We've been hired to think about tomorrow. So if I was the production manager in the factory, am I thinking about the CNC machine that we might need next year? Am I thinking about a new powder coating line? Am I thinking about maybe a new order processing system and software? Whenever I'm thinking about the plug that needs changed in the Hoover and getting production out the line and stopping and fixing. Not really. I'm not thinking like that. So if you think about all of those things that I spoke about earlier, the forklift, the meeting room, the areas of the factory that are forgotten, used by many, but forgotten. If you think about those, there's still things that we have to do. But we as managers should imagine that our day is a glass jar, and what we're going to do is put the rocks. So the rock is us thinking, forward thinking. We're thinking strategy. We're thinking, okay, yes, we've got day-to-day things to do, but what I'm going to do is put the rock in the jar first, and then the pebbles, some of the really urgent, important things still have to be done, and then the sand and gravel, it has to be done. But now everyone gets a little bit of sand and gravel, not just the managers trying to delegate who's going to look after these things. The system looks after itself. So, in the words of Stephen Covey, if the big rocks don't go in your jar first, they aren't going to fit in later. So don't fill your day with sand and gravel. It's so easy to do that and get the smaller things done and get them out of the way and think that you're going to get the rock in. You're not going to get the rock in unless you put it in first and understand what your role is within the organization. So why does total ownership and lean align so well? To go back to the question that I asked earlier, it does because total ownership is a cultural tool for engagement. We have many, many tools for creating a lean culture. Lots of tools, actually. Some create engagement and some don't. Total ownership creates engagement. I had said earlier, if you want every single person in your organization engaged every single day in continuous improvement, we as leaders need to gauge engagement daily. So no matter what system it is, what lean tool it is, if it is total ownership, for instance, the day that system goes into place, if we decide, when Ryan Tierney came to our leadership team and said, total ownership, we were all in on total ownership. But what was happening to all of the other systems that we have? We had our daily duties, fix what bugs you, leave it better than you found it, our meetings, tack time. When any of these systems are introduced, if you think of the speedometer, they've all got lots of engagement. There's lots of momentum going towards these systems. But what naturally happens is our day-to-day problems. So we will have a problem that comes up today, and because we're a continuous improvement culture, we're going to stop and fix. And leadership might take their eye off the ball and go over and fix the problem. And quite often you either add it to a system or create a system. But whenever you take your eye off the ball in any system that we have in a lean culture, the dial starts to go back down again. So it could be at any place. And this is true in any organization that I have ever been in. There will be momentum in some things and not other things. And that will always be the way. You will never get 100% engagement in everything all the time. It's impossible to have. But it's our job as leaders to gauge engagement daily and make sure that that dial doesn't go all the way back down to red. If it does, we as leaders need to take ownership of that. We as leaders manage the culture. If something in your culture isn't working or you just can't get it to work, that is your fault. So going back to Tom's book, Improvement Starts with I need to take ownership and responsibility to make this work. I need to put the work in. Ryan had a phrase earlier this morning, and he said, does anyone remember the phrase? It was this, how can I improve this? Wasn't that the phrase? Was it, how can I improve this? Think about that anytime you come across an issue within your culture. How can I improve this? If total ownership, if you tried it, or if you haven't tried it, and if you have tried it and it's not working, think, how can I improve this? It is total ownership. The culture is your responsibility. I'm going to play a short video here now just because it came from Total Ownership was inspired by Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willing. And I just want to play a short little clip.
And when a team takes ownership of its problems, the problems get solved. And that is true on the battlefield, it is true in business, and it is true in life. So I say, take ownership. Take extreme ownership. Don't make excuses. Don't blame any other person or any other thing. Get control of your ego. Don't hide your delicate pride from the truth. Take ownership of everything in your world, the good and the bad. Take ownership of your mistakes, take ownership of your shortfalls, take ownership of your problems, and then take ownership of the solutions that will get those problems solved.
So you can see why Ryan got very inspired by that. The book is as intense as that as well. So just a reminder from a quote that Ryan had said quite a lot during the initial stages of creating total ownership is that dual ownership is no ownership. Two people own the printer, nobody owns the printer. Two people own the forklift, nobody owns the forklift.